Discover the incredible gift from a poor girl that transformed a lonely billionaire's life on FA. Lila woke up to the sound of roosters crowing, a noise she had long learned to embrace. Slipping out of bed, she tiptoed past her sleeping parents, their faces marked by exhaustion from another day of labor on their modest farm. While she understood the weight of their struggles, Lila found solace in the little things: the beetle-shaped buttons collected from the barn, the worn-out strings of fabric scraps, and the colorful twine left over from her mother's sewing. Each piece was a notion, a tiny treasure meant for her blossoming creativity. As Lila gathered her materials, she felt a tug within her, an ache that stemmed from knowing how little they had yet how much they meant to each other. She often felt like a wanderer, living in two worlds, one filled with love and laughter, the other stark and daunting. The thought of creating a bracelet for her teacher, part of a charity collaboration with a billionaire company, filled her with trepidation. What if they laughed at her? Her delicate craftsmanship seemed worlds apart from the lavish gilded life of someone like William Kane. Yet, she poured her heart into that bracelet, weaving each bead like a story of resilience. The simple beauty radiated her hopes and dreams, an echo of laughter amidst a sea of uncertainty. But when she submitted it, anxiety twisted in her stomach. Could a wealthy CEO ever understand her gift's true meaning? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks as she waited for a response, a tightening knot of anxiety burrowing inside her. When the letter arrived, it was so thick it felt heavy with unexpected significance. As she tore it open, Lila felt hope and dread swirling together. When she read about her invitation to collaborate on a charity initiative, her heart soared, but doubts tangled around her mind like the wild vines that grew in the neglected corners of their farm. What would her friends think? Did they see her as a sellout? She imagined their skeptical faces, whispered doubts darting through her heart like arrows. She felt torn, caught between a chance to inspire change and the embrace of a world she had always eyed warily. Lila was determined, yet consumed by fear. Could she bear being seen alongside William Kane, the bastion of wealth? No matter how uplifting this partnership was meant to be, could her voice ring true amidst the extravagant opulence? The night of the charity gala approached, and every heartbeat echoed the tension building inside her. Lila positioned herself at the edge of the crowd, muscles tense and breath uneven. What if she was wrong? What if the vulnerability she so carefully cultivated with William became meaningless under the glitzy lights? All eyes would be upon him. Would he choose authenticity, or retreat into his fortress of privilege? A sense of unease swept through her like a chill, overwhelming doubt threatening to swallow her whole. In this moment, with the lives of many riding on his decision, would she still have a place in this unfolding narrative? The uncertainty left her heart racing, the weight of the moment magnifying with every silent second, her future hanging in the balance. Lila stood at the party's edge, the swirling crowd of elegantly dressed guests blurring in the periphery of her focus. Anxiety gripped her throat. This was not the familiar comfort of her farm, it was a world of wealth and power that flickered like the chandeliers overhead, dazzling yet daunting. She had worked tirelessly on the bracelet, each bead painstakingly threaded by her hands, but self-doubt loomed over her creativity like an ominous cloud. As she glanced around, her keen eyes caught glimpses of laughter and animated conversations. Everyone exuded confidence, each interaction a masterclass in poise that left her feeling like a misplaced puzzle piece. Briefly, she wondered if any of them could guess her origins, the life she had left behind for this moment. Would they see the poverty behind her artistry or the beauty born from it? William Kane appeared then, an imposing figure that commanded respect. He navigated through the crowd, an air of effortless grace wrapping around him, but his sharp gaze caught Lila's. In that brief moment, he held the weight of his dual existence, an affluent titan grappling with invisible chains. For Lila, seeing him felt like standing on the precipice of her own limitations. She had crafted a masterpiece from scraps, yet he had amassed a fortune in a world that seemed poised to swallow her alive. Yet, she felt a stirring of resolve. Stepping forward, heart pounding, Lila tried to quiet her wavering confidence. Maybe tonight could be about more than just wealth and status. What if she spoke her truth? Wasn't that the purpose of the charity, to transcend barriers and offer hope? With each step, her fears transformed into a sturdy anchor, driving her closer to the man who could help her amplify her voice. "Mr. Kane," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The initial tightness in her chest began to loosen, a quiet determination lining her words. He turned towards her, curiosity lighting his features. "Lila, right? The artist." "Yes. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this." Each word felt like a leap into an unknown void, yet she pressed on. "I was afraid that I wouldn't fit in. That the story behind my creation wouldn't resonate with you or anyone else here." A flicker of recognition crossed his eyes. "We all have stories worth telling. Yours, I imagine, is wonderfully complex." Lila hesitated, taken aback by his straightforwardness. People rarely talked about vulnerability at galas, it was all about facade and prestige. "I just want to convey hope," she admitted, feeling the authenticity of her words gather strength. "It's easy to drown in wealth, but the real beauty often exists in resilience." William's expression shifted, something vulnerable beneath his polished exterior. "You'd be surprised how many people are looking for that connection. Wealth can isolate." Her heart raced again, this time with a new fire. She had articulated a truth that resonated with both of them, an understanding, however fleeting, that wealth did not equate to happiness. What if connecting in that moment could unravel something deeper, something that transcended the barriers they had built around themselves? As they continued to converse, the crowd receded into the background, their voices a distant hum. Lila felt the weight of her initial fears lift slightly, replaced by a burgeoning sense of empowerment. But tension crackled in the atmosphere, foreshadowing a difficult decision looming just out of reach. Could she fully trust him, or would the divide of their worlds prove too great to bridge? Her heart quickened as she realized she might have opened a door, but behind it loomed uncertainty. Could this bear fruit, or would their collaboration ultimately reveal an insurmountable rift? The time had come to face the shadowy barriers of trust, and in that moment, the stakes felt higher than ever. Would she step through and risk everything she had ever known? Lila felt a charged silence envelop them, the world around fading into a dim background of laughter and clinking glasses. The gravity of her next words threatened to drag her spirit down, but she squared her shoulders, driven by a sense of newfound purpose. Here stood William Kane, a man whose life was a mirror of conflicts she could only grasp. He was both the summit of success and an island of isolation. "What do you see when you look at my bracelet?" she asked, allowing her fingers to hover over the cool beads, her heart pounding with vulnerability. This was no longer merely a conversation about art, it had become a conversation about identity, belonging, and the pursuit of meaning. William paused, seemingly weighing each word. "I see a story, one that evokes warmth, resilience, and a touch of melancholy." His dark eyes didn't falter, but stirring thoughts raced behind them. "It speaks to the unkindness of experience, something often overlooked in this world of extravagance." A spark ignited inside Lila. For the first time since the gala began, she felt less like an outsider. This wealthy man recognized the emotional depth of her work, the life thread woven into each bead. It wasn't just an artistic endeavor, it was an extension of herself. Her palms began to sweat with a cocktail of hope and nervousness as she considered her next move. "Maybe there's more to this than any of us realized," she said slowly, testing the waters. "What if we shared the stories behind these creations? What if they could help others struggling in silence?" William's brow furrowed, assessing her proposal. "You mean an exhibition?" showcasing art along with the stories of those who created it. It could open a floodgate of vulnerability. The idea seemed to size him up, both thrilling and daunting. Yes. Imagine if we combined the beauty of your platform with my vision. We could create a dialogue, break down barriers, let others see beyond the surface. With every word, Lila felt emboldened. This was her strength, transforming pain into beauty, isolation into connection. But as excitement coursed through her veins, a flicker of intimidation loomed nearby, casting a shadow on her ambition. What if she were not enough? But there's always the risk of rejection. People may not want to hear about the struggles behind the artistry, she confessed. William nodded, his gaze unwavering. Those fears are part of any endeavor worth pursuing. I often wondered if my wealth isolated me from genuine connections. Perhaps our collaboration could bridge that gap. Confidence surged within Lila, along with a hint of doubt. As the two stood on the brink of a possible partnership, the thrill of sharing her truth contended with the nagging worries of inadequacy. Was she truly capable of impacting this world, especially alongside someone like William? A sudden laugh echoed from beyond, slicing through her concentration. Drawing in a deep breath, Lila realized that this moment tested not just her creative potential but also her ability to advocate for herself. Then let us do it, she declared, the strength of her decision pushing her forward. Let us turn your world and mine into a space for shared stories, resilience, and hope. William's expression morphed into a thoughtful smile. I see you've overcome your fear, Lila. That's a significant step. Yet, lurking behind their budding collaboration was the discomfort of uncharted territory. Both held their fears close, and while the thrill of possibility shone bright, Lila could still feel the fragility of trust between them, poised to shatter at any moment. As they finished their exchange with a tentative agreement, Lila's heart thundered at the cusp of this transformative journey. Could this be the turning point she had been yearning for, or a miscalculation that could unravel everything? A thrill of dread washed over her, and the strangest thought crossed her mind, would revealing her story lead to liberation or deeper entrapment? The answers lay just beyond their grasp, waiting to be unearthed in the forthcoming days. With resolve battling uncertainty in her chest, Lila leaned in closer to William, eager to embark on this journey, even as fragments of fear chilled her excitement. What lay ahead would require more than courage, it would demand resilience, trust, and perhaps, a confrontation with the shadows of her past. As they turned to rejoin the crowd, the vibrant ocean of elegant gowns and polished shoes surged around them. But they now stood together, two unlikely allies navigating their way through uncharted waters. And just as Lila began to envision the path ahead, a figure swept into view, an unexpected face from her past, intruding upon her moment of uncertainty. Her heartbeat quickened, and a trepidation swelled within her. Would this newcomer jeopardize everything she had just begun to build? Lila's gaze locked onto the newcomer, her breath hitching in her throat. The familiar face sent shockwaves through her, a collision of nostalgia and anxiety that left her momentarily paralyzed. It was Rachel, her childhood friend, someone she had thought was lost to the echoes of her past. The vibrant gala faded into a hazy backdrop as Lila grappled with conflicting emotions, joy battled with fear of judgment, and a surge of memories threatened to overwhelm her. As Rachel approached, Lila's mind raced. She had left behind so many fragments of herself and had worked hard to reshape her identity in this new world. What would Rachel think of the woman she had become? Would she see the confidence Lila was striving to project, or would she only see the girl who once felt small and powerless? Is that really you? Rachel's voice was a mix of disbelief and warmth. Lila. I hardly recognized you. Engulfed in a rush of emotions, Lila smiled, attempting to suppress the rapid heartbeat that echoed the tension inside her. Rachel. I didn't expect to see you here. The two embraced, the warmth of their connection briefly dispelling the uncertainty that clung to Lila. Yet, as they stepped back, reality crashed in like a wave. Rachel's eyes flickered over to William, who stood just a few steps away, observing the reunion with an inscrutable expression. Lila's heart raced. Did Rachel know about the exhibition they were contemplating? Could she see the cracks in Lila's newfound facade? I heard about your art, Rachel continued, the sincerity in her voice palpable. It's amazing. You're doing incredible things. I always knew you would. A soft rush of pride coursed through Lila, but it was accompanied by a tightening anxiety. She felt like an imposter, the accolades felt painfully detached from the self-doubt that persisted at the edges of her mind. Thank you, Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's a new path for me. Speaking of new paths, Rachel said, her expression shifting to one of curiosity, I never expected you to partner with someone like William Kane. He's a bit of a recluse. Lila glanced at William, who appeared unfazed, yet something in his eyes hinted at empathy. He sees something in my work. The words were an assertion, but Lila felt the weight of uncertainty pressed against her chest. Could she articulate the depth behind their collaboration to Rachel without unraveling the truth she was still processing herself? Just be careful, okay? Rachel's tone softened, concern etched into her features. I know how lonely it can be at the top. You don't want to lose yourself in someone else's world again. The air thickened with tension as Rachel's words hovered between them, unnerving Lila with their piercing insight. Did Rachel recognize the vulnerabilities lurking beneath her confident veneer? I'm not going to lose myself, Lila asserted, greater firmness pushing through her wavering resolve. I'm learning to be more than what others expect. This project with William is about sharing stories, mine included. It's about connection. For a moment, Rachel's expression shifted from concern to something softer. I admire that. I really do. But as the euphoric warmth of encouragement formed a protective halo, Lila's gaze drifted back to William. His interest felt like both an anchor and a storm, prompting conflicting sentiments to rise. Did he genuinely want depth, or was this partnership merely a distraction from his own loneliness? And could she still pursue the beauty of her truth with him, despite the ghosts of her past believing she was unworthy? With every moment that slipped by, Lila could feel the stakes heightening. Not only was she on the brink of exhibiting her art, but she was also teetering on the cusp of vulnerability that could expose everything, opening the floodgates of fear she fought so hard to contain. I should let you two catch up, William said, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts, drawing both Lila and Rachel's attention. In an instant, he became an enigma again, a billionaire caught between his world and hers, the vulnerability he resonated often overlooked. Yet today, there was a sense they both shared, an unspoken understanding of loneliness rooted in their respective experiences. As Rachel moved to stand beside William, curiosity mingled with apprehension in Lila's chest. Just as the clarity of their collective purpose began to dawn, a knot of anxiety twisted inside her. Would this moment solidify her path forward, or would the confluence of old ties and new ventures become her undoing? Just remember, Lila, Rachel said, sensing the tension in the air. It's not just about the art. It's about who you become on this journey. Her words resonated deeply, a poignant reminder of the unfolding road ahead. Lila could only listen, but what she really wanted was to discover the answer lurking beneath her surface, as she confronted her fears and reached for her dreams alongside William. Who would she actually become? The room felt alive with possibility, and as Lila took a deep breath, she understood the time had come to confront not only her ambitions but the parts of her past that had shadowed her. Would she step into this new light, or would the echoes of her former self hold her back? The air buzzed with electric anticipation as Lila stood before William and Rachel, her internal world shifting beneath her feet. The comfort of the familiar both in Rachel's smile and the art she was so passionate about was a stark contrast to the disorienting presence of uncertainty that came with mingling past ties and future aspirations. She was acutely aware of the delicate balance she needed to maintain, not only between these relationships but also within herself. Would you like to see some of my recent pieces? Lila offered, her voice steadier than she felt. The eagerness in her tone surprised her. It was as though she was trying to anchor herself in what she knew best, diverting attention from the spiraling doubts creeping back in. Absolutely. I've seen snippets online, but I can't wait to see them in person, Rachel gushed, her eyes lighting up with genuine enthusiasm. Lila's pulse quickened, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation washing over her. She was suddenly tasked with externalizing her internal struggles, revealing her artistry intertwined with the very essence of her journey. It felt like stripping off layers of armor, exposing her vulnerabilities beneath. "We have a studio space nearby," William said, his voice cutting through her racing thoughts. "We can head there now." The idea of sharing her work with William and Rachel evoked a strange blend of pride and fear. Each stroke of paint on her canvases was a reflection of her struggles and triumphs, her ecstatic expressions intermingled with shadows of doubt. Could her pieces convey the truth she fought to own, or would they fall flat before the sharp scrutiny of those who had witnessed her evolution? Once at the studio, Lila swept aside her apprehensions as she led Rachel and William through the space. Each piece seemed to pulse with life, colors splashed across the canvases, vibrant like her aspirations, yet, when viewed closely, they bore traces of her anxieties. "Wow," Rachel breathed, reaching toward a large canvas that encapsulated the chaotic dance between light and shadow. "It's like I can feel the emotions creeping out of this one." Lila's heart swelled with hope. "I wanted to express how beauty often coexists with chaos," she said, her voice picking up confidence with every word. "It's about embracing both sides of ourselves." William stepped closer, studying the painting intently. "There's a depth here that resonates," he mused, his eyes lifting to meet Lila's. For a fleeting instant, she saw admiration in his gaze that sent a flutter through her chest, a different kind of connection than the one steeped in loneliness. "This one is about transformation," Lila continued, gesturing to a piece where hues of dark blues faded into warm golds. "It's how I envision my journey, the struggle transforming into something powerful and beautiful." Rachel nodded, clearly moved. "I can see it. This is your story. You've come so far." The validation she sought stirred something in Lila, a flicker of empowerment. Could she, indeed, use her art to tell her story, free herself from the shadows that clung to her? "I want to create a space where others can share their experiences too," Lila said, the resolve in her voice solidifying. "This exhibition with William, it's not just about me, it's about connection and growth, bringing out the shared journey of so many." A moment of silence stretched. Lila felt as if the air thickened with the weight of her declaration. "Make sure that intention doesn't get lost," William said, his voice low but firm. "In this industry, it's easy to lose sight of why we create." His words resonated, reminding Lila of Rachel's earlier caution. Could she navigate these waters without losing herself? Each entrepreneurial partnership demanded a degree of intimacy, compelling and precarious at the same time. Lila's resolve wavered slightly as the truth began to solidify. She needed to establish boundaries. Art could be a collective experience, but she had to stay anchored in her own voice. "You're right. I need to ground myself in my vision. I can appreciate collaboration, but my story must come first." "Always," Rachel affirmed, flashing a supportive smile. Taking a step back, Lila allowed herself to absorb her surroundings, her aspirations laid bare in paint and canvas. It was more than an exhibition, it was an embodiment of her personal growth, a declaration of autonomy crafted in vivid colors and powerful strokes. Yet, despite this surge of clarity, an unease lingered at the edges of her mind. Would her anticipated success lead her to triumph, or would it unravel her in ways she couldn't yet foresee? As the evening unfurled amidst laughter and shared stories, Lila felt the shadows of her doubts recede slightly. Yet, a question loomed as she met William's gaze one last time. Was she truly ready to step into this new chapter, or was there still ground beneath her feet yet to be traversed? It struck her then, a realization dawning like the onset of dawn. The greatest transformation was not just the metamorphosis of her art, but within her own self. And with that thought, she understood there was something deeper to confront, a truth waiting to be discovered amidst her evolving reality. The journey was just beginning, and every brushstroke mattered, leading her to the ultimate question: what would she uncover as she ventured deeper into the unknown? Lila's resolve solidified overnight, fueled by the invigorating conversations from the studio. Yet, as dawn broke and reality crept back in, she felt a small but familiar spark of anxiety flashing in her chest. The exhilarating buzz of possibility had ignited her passion, but with it came the pressing weight of expectation. It was clear that if she wanted this exhibition to resonate, she had to peel back the layers of fear enough to fully reveal who she truly was. As she prepared for the day ahead, Lila stared into her reflection. The gentle nuances of self-doubt began to tangle within her thoughts. Would her vulnerability be her strength, or would it expose weaknesses she feared to confront? This duality reverberated, not just in art but in the choices she made. Every brushstroke felt like a decision. Some celebrated the power of metamorphosis, while others echoed the fears of her past. The inner critic was unforgiving. She decided that today would be a self-care day. It was not about avoidance, rather, it was a chance to understand what she was truly navigating. A long walk in the early morning sun beckoned, serving as a sanctuary to gain clarity. As Lila strolled through the bustling streets, she absorbed the vibrant energy around her. If she was to explore her own journey, she realized she needed to make more space for the tumult outside her studio. The conversations with Rachel and William echoed through her mind. Their encouragement carved out pathways of possibility, and Lila envisioned ways to echo their support in a meaningful exhibition. Yet, the underlying apprehension of setting boundaries loomed over her, making the prospect of sharing her work seem daunting. Returning to her studio, she sensed the comfort of familiarity settling on her. Unpackaging her canvases brought forth a wave of nostalgia and introspection. Each piece told a story she had begun to own, yet also one that wove in myriad threads of others. Bachelorhood was a transient experience, her life was anything but. Lila picked up a blending knife stained with the colors of her last creation. She could feel the weight of unspoken words captured within the paint. As she spread vibrant shades across a new blank canvas, questions rattled through her mind. How would she balance her voice with the stories of others? And whom would she invite into this sacred space of revelation? With each stroke, Lila planned an anchor point for her vision. Perhaps it wasn't a question of choosing one narrative over the other but understanding how her journey intertwined with those who wandered into her life. Hours slipped away under a meditative flow of paint and reflections as she crafted piece after piece. In this creative trance, Lila unearthed new elements she hadn't realized were within her grasp. Tangible hope coursed through the painted visions, and she felt in touch with a deeper voice that had been waiting in the shadows of her mind. That evening, Lila carefully organized her work in preparation for her first perspective gathering, a small session with close friends who understood her art. As she laid the canvases side by side, she felt an undercurrent of anticipation, mixed with traces of vulnerability. It was a connectedness she yearned to share, yet she sensed the lingering question of who she truly was still shrouded in mystery. Later, as she sat across from her friends sharing laughter and excitement over her creations, the beauty of candid, honest dialogue emerged. The air was charged with admiration, but she could feel her own hesitation simmering beneath its surface. Was she willing to let people in not just to view her art, but to experience her authentic self, with all the chaos it entailed? Just as the gathering shifted from admiration to deeper conversation, doubt edged its way back into her thoughts. In that moment, she realized boundaries were necessary not to shield herself from connection, but to protect the essence of her voice amid the exhilarating chaos of newfound partnership. Faced with this recognition, Lila's heart danced. Between fear and empowerment. Could she articulate her needs and aspirations without losing the connections she had begun to foster? As the evening faded and her friends departed, Lila stood amidst the echoes of laughter, struck by the uncertainty that lingered. Boundaries, it seemed, were not barriers but bridges that might allow her to step fully into her role as both artist and individual. With the remnants of doubt swirling in her mind, she understood she was only beginning to tap into her own narrative. The summit of her strength now felt raisable, but there remained hidden depths to explore within her heart. The next day loomed on the horizon, and with it came the promise of discovery, both within herself and in the relationships she desperately wanted to nurture. How would she navigate this new terrain, and what revelations awaited on the journey ahead both in her art and her heart? The sunlight filtered through the studio windows, casting a warm glow that highlighted textures and colors on Lila's canvases. With a still fresh resolve and a sense of urgency to embrace her artistic journey, she dove deeper into her work. The chaotic swirl of her thoughts had begun to coalesce into a clearer vision, and today, she aimed to explore this newfound clarity through creativity. As Lila prepared her materials, she considered how vulnerability might transform each brushstroke. Would sharing her personal narrative resonate with others? She could hear echoes of her friends' affirmations mingling with her internal struggles. Each piece was a layer of her identity, and slowly she recognized that exposing her true self could be her most powerful statement. But the fear of rejection lingered like a specter while she painted. Patiently, she constructed a series of works intended for the exhibition, each canvas reflecting fragments of her past, her dreams, and her fears. Her paintbrush flowed rhythmically, yet each stroke felt like a confrontation with hidden wounds. Memories surfaced, moments of joy stitched together with those of despair. In her heart, she wondered if she confronted the parts of her life that seemed unflattering or painful, could she create space for healing in herself and others? The weight of these reflections was palpable as she stepped back, surveying her creations. The colors visualized an emotional tapestry, yet they held mysteries that she hesitated to unravel fully. How could she communicate the narratives that were so embedded within her? With an internal sigh, she knew it wouldn't be enough to simply present the art, she needed to contextualize it, give it voice, purpose, and clear boundaries. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Rachel peeked inside, her expression a mix of excitement and encouragement. "Hey, Lila. I brought coffee. You should take a break. You've been at it for hours." Relieved for the interruption, Lila welcomed her friend with a smile. As they settled on a couple of stools in her colorful sanctuary, Rachel leaned in, curiosity radiating from her. "What are you working on, really?" Lila hesitated, a part of her wanting to retreat behind her walls, but Rachel's genuine interest nudged her toward vulnerability. "I'm trying to paint my truth, the stories only I can tell," she confessed, the words spilling forth uneasily. Rachel's eyes widened, a spark igniting in her voice. "That's it. You're not just painting, you're also sharing your growth, your journey. You have to articulate that in your exhibition." The idea resonated deeply within Lila, igniting more questions. Could she set the stage for deeper engagement without overwhelming herself? What if she built an interactive component into her exhibition, inviting viewers to share their own stories alongside her work? As they sipped coffee, Lila began sketching out ideas, breaking the silence with scattered thoughts. But even as a blueprint emerged, she could feel a familiar weight of self-doubt creeping in. Would they understand her? Would they care? Rachel seemed attuned to the flicker of hesitation, leaning forward. "You have a unique voice, Lila. Don't doubt that. Trust that your journey will inspire others." With those words, Lila felt a spark of gratitude, but it only illuminated the shadows of fear that remained. Was she ready to extend an invitation for others to join her in this raw space? As she considered the implications, a thrill coursed through her attention between fear and revelation that energized her. Soon after Rachel left, Lila confronted the blank canvas again. She wished to leave space for dialogue and connection but found herself wondering how much she was willing to lay bare. This exhibition wasn't just about the art, it was the beginning of her narrative intersecting with those who would view it. That night, as darkness enveloped the city, Lila sat on the floor, surrounded by her canvases. Each one represented a personal truth. She felt the urge to begin crafting the stories that would accompany her art, but looming in the background was the desire to protect her heart. The next day promised more revelations and a clearer path, but first, she would need to make an essential choice. How much of her own story was she willing to share? The intricate dance of vulnerability and strength ahead compelled her to confront the deeper layers of her identity. Lila prepared for a weekend gathering with peers where she would openly discuss her artistic intentions. The stakes suddenly felt higher as the challenge of this fragile vulnerability began to weigh heavily on her mind. She realized that pushing through the discomfort could illuminate paths she hadn't yet considered. Would she step fully into the light and share her truth, or remain tangled within the shadows? A vital moment loomed just ahead. Could this gathering become the catalyst that unveiled all she had concealed? Lila stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back, a mix of determination and anxiety swirling within her. Today was the day of the gathering, a mere few hours away, yet her mind raced with doubts. Could she articulate her artistic journey without crumbling under the weight of her vulnerability? She had spent countless nights mapping out how to blend her narrative into her artwork, but still, the clarity felt elusive. The studio was alive with an unusual energy, her canvases pulsing with the colors of her emotions. She couldn't escape the nagging thought: was she ready to expose the raw parts of herself? To communicate her deepest struggles and triumphs to an audience? While she had contemplated interactive elements for her exhibition, the thought paralyzed her: what if no one connected with her story? Taking a deep breath, Lila carefully placed one foot in front of the other, making her way into her workspace. Each step seemed to confront her growing insecurities. The chatter from her peers echoed in her mind like frantic whispers: what if they don't find it worthy? Quickly she grabbed a canvas and began to paint with fervor, the brushstrokes becoming both her escape and her battleground. As she immersed herself, she recalled Rachel's encouraging words, lacing them through her brushwork. Perhaps the fear was a signal of growth rather than a barrier. Her inner dialogue shifted. The tentative brush became bold, each stroke transforming into a conduit for her truth. She'd been so afraid of their opinions that she nearly silenced the one voice that truly mattered, her own. With each canvas, she could feel a flicker of empowerment igniting. What if she began to see vulnerability as a strength, a courageous act of sharing herself with others? It was no longer simply about art, it was about her journey and what she was brave enough to reveal. That insight propelled her forward, and she began crafting descriptions for each painting, delving into past experiences, emotions, and dreams in a way that felt both daunting and exhilarating. As the afternoon sun dipped low, Lila couldn't help but smile at her progress. She had filled the studio with new expressions of her journey, but a part of her still remained tethered to fear. While each canvas told a story, she wrestled with how much detail to divulge in the accompanying narratives. Could she trust their reception? Would it create space for the dialogue she craved without exposing her to ridicule? Her reverie was interrupted by another knock at the door, this time a little louder, almost demanding. Lila opened it to find her friend Maya standing with an urgent look. "You're going to be late if you don't get moving." As the two rushed towards the gathering, Lila's heart raced not just with apprehension but also with a thrilling sense of potential. The laughter and camaraderie with her friends buoyed her spirit, yet she still felt the weight on her shoulders. What awaited her was an unknown and possibly defining moment. When they arrived, the warmth of the space enveloped Lila, but an immediate wave of self-consciousness made her hesitate. The chatter around her faded momentarily as she scanned the room filled with artists and enthusiasts, a mix of familiar faces and strangers. It struck her how many of them were here, ripe with stories of their own, each carrying fragments of experiences that had shaped their paths. With a force of will, she moved deeper into the gathering, hoping to shake off the trembling doubt. She sought out a quiet corner where she could observe and prepare to engage. After a few minutes of silence while she collected her thoughts, Lila spotted a small group discussing personal journeys in their work. It felt familiar and inviting, yet now more than ever, it felt like a test of her courage. Was she ready to step into that conversation and share her truth? The growing urgency in her chest pushed her toward the decision she had been grappling with. This was not merely an exhibition, this could be the moment that launched her into a realm of public introspection and connection. In the midst of her internal turmoil, a voice called out to her, "Lila, come join us." It was Rachel, waving her over enthusiastically. It was now or never. The plunge had to be taken. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself. Perhaps this gathering could become the launch pad she needed, not just for her artwork, but for her entire journey. Little did she know, this moment would shift the course of her narrative in ways she couldn't yet foresee. With a steady resolve, Lila stepped forward, prepared to both share and discover. As she entered the circle of conversation, she felt the tides of change stirring deep within her. Would this be the revelation she had been yearning for, or would she find herself retreated back into the shadows? The answer awaited her in the words she was about to speak. The moment Lila stepped into the circle, her nerves surged, intertwining with the warmth that radiated from Rachel and the others. They were animatedly recounting personal narratives, their voices rich with stories that were both profound and relatable. As she listened, a blend of courage and trepidation coursed through her veins. Each shared experience revealed a facet of vulnerability that was simultaneously daunting and liberating. Lila's mind raced. Could her experience resonate as deeply? The thought alone triggered an internal dialogue, one fraught with the familiar pangs of doubt. She felt her palms dampen as anxiety clawed at her heartstrings once more. But a quiet determination began to flicker. If she stayed silent now, would she forever remain an observer, never fully participating in her own life? "Hey, Lila. What about you?" A voice interrupted her thoughts, snapping her back to attention. It was Maya, her eyes sparkling with encouragement, urging Lila to share. Taking a deep breath, Lila resisted the impulse to retreat into silence. She realized that this moment could be the inflection point she had longed for, the opportunity to broadcast her truth. It was not merely an exposition of her art but a narrative of resilience, a tale of how her creativity had helped her navigate through shadows. I've been exploring how vulnerability plays into my art," she began, the stammer betraying her uncertainty. Yet as she continued, her thoughts began to flow more easily. "Each painting represents a slice of my journey, moments where I felt lost but also moments where I discovered fragments of strength." In the hushed room, every listener appeared engaged, eyes sharp with interest. Lila could feel their attention pulling her forward, urging her to delve deeper. Fueled by the energy surrounding the group, she found herself recounting her struggles, discussions with her insecurities, the late nights enveloped in shadows of doubt, and the eventual awakening of her voice through art. Each word effortlessly painted vivid imagery in the listeners' minds, drawing them into her world, her battles. In that circle, she discovered how words and art had the power to forge connections, transcending deeply personal experiences. The thoughtful expressions of her peers confirmed her instincts, they were moved. Lila felt a surge of empowerment, the validity of her narrative illuminating corners of her heart that had remained shrouded in darkness. And then it hit her: this wasn't merely her journey, it was also theirs. Vulnerability, she realized, was a universal language that invoked shared understanding. The realization didn't just elevate her narrative, it cemented a newfound belief in her purpose as an artist. She wasn't alone in her struggles, she was part of a larger tapestry. After finishing, Lila was startled by the appreciative silence that buzzed around her. Then Rachel broke it with a beaming smile. "That was absolutely incredible, Lila. Your fearlessness in sharing makes it much easier for all of us." The validation washed over Lila in waves, but just as quickly, a flicker of doubt emerged. Had she overshared? Had she exposed too much of herself too soon? Such thoughts threatened to undo her confidence, but she fought back. No longer could she shy away from the parts of her identity that made her uniquely herself. As the conversation drifted, light-hearted exchanges picked up, but Lila was lost in thought. What had she unlocked in herself? The process of sharing not only connected her with others, it had illuminated her own artistic voice. The realization of her potential struck with raw intensity. Yet just as Lila began feeling reassured, she overheard fragments of conversation nearby that piqued her anxiety anew. It was a duo discussing the reception of another artist's work, debating its merit with an edge of sarcasm. Fear gripped her. What if they spoke like that about her art? The tension gnawed at her confidence, but something deeper within resisted. She had already learned to redefine vulnerability as strength. Each brushstroke had been an act of defiance against her internal critics. Why would she now allow external judgments to shape her worth? Determined to let that realization solidify, Lila took a deep breath. It was still early in the process, and the path ahead was strewn with uncertainties. But she felt ready to confront whatever would come next, emboldened by her truth. This encounter had only scratched the surface of a much larger journey. What awaited her was the potential for growth, exploration, and perhaps even the courage to fully embrace the canvas of her identity. With every brushstroke and every shared story, the horizon of possibilities expanded, beckoning her into unknown territories. As she sat back in the group, contemplating her next steps, a stranger approached her with an anticipative glint in his eyes. "Your story resonated deeply. I'd love to discuss a collaboration," he said, his words laced with opportunity. Instantly, Lila felt a rush of excitement mixed with dread. What implications did this new connection hold, and was she truly ready to step into the next phase of her artistic journey? The conversation had sparked a flame. Now, she needed to traverse the chasms that lay ahead, where the unknown loomed just at the periphery. Lila felt the seductive pull of change, and it led her to question what she was prepared to undertake next. Would she seize this chance for collaboration, or would self-doubt hold her back yet again? The next challenge awaited, shrouded in the promise of discovery. Lila stood at the brink of a new chapter, her heart racing as she absorbed the aftermath of her revelations. The gathering had ignited a flame within her, illuminating not just her journey but the potential for collaboration, a thrilling yet daunting prospect. What had begun as a timid voice within the circle had now expanded into something greater, a collective embrace of shared stories and aspirations. Feeling empowered, Lila engaged in conversation with the stranger who had approached her. His enthusiasm mirrored her own, and she began to explore the possibility of working together. As they discussed ideas, concepts, and visions, Lila felt a compelling shift. No longer was she an artist merely representing her own story. Instead, she was stepping into a role that combined the voices of many, intertwining threads of resilience and hope. By the end of the gathering, Lila had not only validated her own narrative but had paved the way for new collaborations. Each handshake and exchanged word felt like a small victory, a step toward greater visibility. It solidified her belief that authenticity could resonate far beyond her individual experience. She had achieved a state of both confidence and recognition, a synthesis of her past and future aspirations. In the following weeks, her studio transformed. Artists of various backgrounds began to filter in, all eager to share their stories as they co-created pieces that reflected their collective experiences. Lila orchestrated a space that honored vulnerability, inviting participants to contribute their narratives alongside her artwork. This synthesis of creation became a tapestry, connecting lives and experiences, stitching together the very fabric of resilience. When the opening exhibition day arrived, her heart swelled with anticipation. It was not simply her art on display, it was a celebration of every journey that had entered her studio. As guests filtered in, she stood proud, witnessing her vision unfold. The atmosphere was one of appreciation and connection, a far cry from the doubts that had once clouded her perspective. The impact of her work was immediate. Faces lit up as they wandered from piece to piece, sharing stories linked to the artwork and acknowledging their shared struggles and triumphs. It was profound. Lila realized that with every connection formed, barriers crumbled. The power of her vulnerability had morphed into a strength that resonated beyond her initial fears. Validation soon came in waves. An art critic, deeply moved by her exhibition, later wrote a feature highlighting the unique blend of personal stories that permeated Lila's work. An artistic exploration that deftly bridges the chasm between wealth and humility, the headline proclaimed. As she read the article, Lila felt etched shadows of her former self dissipate, replaced with a growing confidence. Deep satisfaction radiated through her veins as she reflected on her journey. The timid girl from the farm, who once feared judgment, had transformed into a recognized artist and curator, embracing her voice while creating a platform for others. With each success, Lila felt doubt breaching her walls less frequently. The narrative she had crafted, one of resilience, vulnerability, and connection, was becoming a hallmark of her identity. While she still encountered moments of apprehension, they no longer held the same weight. Instead, they became stepping stones guiding her to greater heights. Eventually, she positioned herself as a credible force within the art community, invited to speak on panels that discussed the intersection of art, identity, and social impact. The once lonely girl standing at the edges had now established herself as an advocate for personal narratives in artistic expression. This achievement solidified her role, allowing her to champion others navigating similar paths. In a poignant moment, Lila stepped back into her studio, filled with canvases reflecting the stories of countless artists. A moment of realization struck her: the journey was not only about showcasing her own truth, but also about amplifying the voices around her. The significance of each brushstroke continued to deepen, echoing through the lives she had touched. Lila had transcended the fear that once paralyzed her, moving into a realm of profound fulfillment. The journey was ongoing, peppered with challenges and growth, yet she embraced every turn unapologetically. She had found her place, and the light within her shone brighter than ever, illuminating paths for others to walk beside her. As Lila stared at her art, now vibrant with shared stories, her heart swelled with pride. She had conquered her fears, transformed her narrative, and created an invaluable space for authentic expression. With unstoppable momentum buzzing through her, Lila knew that this was the true essence of her achievement: personal growth intertwined with the brave exploration of the human experience. Remember, transformative stories like Lila's are waiting for your engagement. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional journeys. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these powerful narratives alive. Comment your reactions and theories about Lila's journey. Let's spark conversations. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.